I want to pick up on what Michael said. One of the most stunning documents ever in the history of humanity, I'll be that blunt about it, appears in this book, Witness to Roswell. And the funny thing about a cover-up, and this goes to the heart of what we're talking about today, if somebody put a UFO in this room, I guarantee you the majority of people would say, ho-hum, there'd be the yawn factor. The yawn factor is, well, we know that UFOs are real. You know, we know it's real. If somebody said, guess what? There was a conspiracy to shoot President John F. Kennedy. I've proved it. Vincent Bugliosi aside, we've done it, we've proved it. People would say, yeah, we know that. I mean, it's true. That's exactly right. So what? So, book comes out earlier this year. In it is literally an affidavit. Now, it's written, signed by this gentleman called Lieutenant Walter Haut, who, after he wrote the famous Roswell press release, Army captures flying saucer in desert. Famous one, you've all seen it, Roswell Daily News, whatever. After he writes it and sends the press release to all the newspapers, turns out that that whole story gets debunked by General Ramey of the Army, who says, oh no, it was a weather balloon. And for 60 years, people have said, it doesn't make any sense that the most important strategic air command base, the base intelligence officer, a bombardier, a pilot, William Blanchard, the base commandant, wouldn't know what a weather balloon is. Pretty dumb, right? Well, in their book, Witness to Roswell, by Tom Carey and Don Schmidt, in their book, they append a chapter about Walter Haut. And they describe how Walter Haut, toward the end of his life, was convinced by Don Schmidt to really write down what he knew, the truth. Now, other people have come to me. One person from the museum who said she heard Walter Haut at the museum 4 or 5 years ago talk about the aliens he saw. So he was talking about this. Another person was George Filer, who actually encountered, he was Major George Filer, and he's one of the people who write on the web and wrote for us. George Filer said when he was flying over the North Sea as part of the U.S. Air Force tanker team, he was told, I want you to vector on that UFO. He saw it with his own eyes. He captured it on radar. That was his story, and he's been talking about UFOs ever since. They both heard Walter Haut talk about having seen the alien body. So Walter Haut writes this memo, okay? Buries it. This is to remain sealed until after my death. And he died, he actually died in 2005, and in 2005, the family opened up this affidavit. Now, Don Schmidt knew what was in it, because Walter told him. Opened up this memo, and in the memo, in this affidavit, what does it say? You ready for this? These blockbusters? One, that the general who debunked the whole story of UFOs actually flew from Fort Worth to Roswell to see the real wreckage. Once he saw the real wreckage, he said, we got to have a cover story. We got to have a cover-up. So, because there were two, not one crash, not one site, but two crashes at two different locations, the general said, everybody knows about this one crash. The civilians are all over it. The fire department's been there. It's a mess. Whole crash site's been turned upside down. Let's reveal that crash site. Let's keep the other site a secret. And that was the plan. It was a cover-up by using a real crash to cover up the crash they wanted to keep secret because of all the alien bodies. That's what they wanted to do. That was the plan. Well, they all agreed to this plan. Walter Haut, yep. Blanchard, the commanding officer. Jesse Marcel, the base intelligence officer who first discovered the site. And everybody else at the table. Then Blanchard walks Haut into the hangar where the UFO is. And he sees this big egg-shaped 15-foot or so object under a tarp, but it's egg-shaped, and he sees the alien bodies, or body actually. It was under a tarp, but he sees the big head, big eyes, and his commanding officer says, oh, about 4 feet high, holds his hand up 4 feet high. That's what it was. Now, this comports with every single eyewitness to Roswell that I have interviewed for UFO Magazine. Every single person has told me the same story. I saw the alien. It was about 4 feet high. It looked like a child. You could tell it was more human than not. But the scary thing about it was it didn't come from this planet, period. Everybody, I mean, about 5 people that have seen this thing, and they've all said the same thing. Now, they agree to this story. They fly the wreckage up to Carswell Air Force Base in Texas, Fort Worth, and there, Roger Ramey does a cover-up of a cover-up of a cover-up. Ramey says, oh no, it's a weather balloon. So he takes Marcel, puts him in front of this weather balloon material, and says, here, take a picture with the weather balloon. And the next day, there's Marcel's face in front of that balloon. For the next 30 years of his life, Marcel has to be the intelligence officer who couldn't see straight, because he couldn't tell what a weather balloon was. Then the Air Force said, no, it's Project Mogul. Then the Air Force says, no, these were crash dummies. They've come up with 3 or 4 cover stories the whole time, never telling the truth. Finally, in this affidavit, Walter Haut tells the truth. Now, the original copy, the sealed copy, the formerly sealed copy, the signed, notarized copy, is still in the possession of Walter Haut's family. But in this book, Witness to Roswell, Tom Cowdery and Don Schmidt reproduced the memo, and it's there. You can all see it. The point is that here it is. It's 2007. It's 60 years later, and finally, the absolute truth comes out. But in the truth coming out, what's so fascinating to us here, up here, and to the experiencers and contactees, all the people who've had contact, and this is the real story of this gathering, all the people who've had contact have had their lives absolutely turned upside down by this. I mean, I'm telling you, you bump into something from another world, dimension, time, plane, universe, whatever. You bump into that. Your sense of reality is shaken to its very core. Because the first thing you think you're crazy, right? Then you think, okay, it was like Ebenezer Scrooge on Christmas Eve, an underdone piece of potato, right? You know what it is? The fact is, for you, you've had an experience that you can't explain, and it tends to disturb every aspect of your life. Well, now, here's a case where a gentleman, Walter Haut, had contact 60 years ago, and he chose to leave a brilliant Air Force career to stay in Roswell and sell insurance. And everybody asked him, why? Why would you do that? Oh, I don't get it. You were going to go to Washington. You could have gotten your full bird colonel. You could have gotten your star. You could have been a general. Why? And he would smile, just like that, and say, that's what I chose to do. Walter Haut left, we're going to say in UFO Magazine in July. That's our speculation. And Don Schmidt agrees with us. We're going to say that Walter Haut left because what else could he do? He made a promise to Blanchard not to reveal the story. A solemn oath to his closest friend. They were crew members together. They were going to drop the atomic bomb on Nagasaki before the other crew was put in place. So these guys made an oath. What's the one way that Haut could have been forced to reveal the truth about what happened? A higher officer, a superior officer, orders him to tell the truth. So what does he do? The only thing he can do. He leaves the military, so nobody could order him to do it. Look at how the contact that Farah's had, that Jeremy's had, that everybody's had at this table, look at how contact disturbs the pattern of your life. Your life changes. And that's what we're going to be talking about and seeing and hearing about for the next 3 days. Thanks, Farah.